If you want to be doing remote work, you need to be focusing on projects and tasks that you can get assigned and you work on them and then you give them back a couple of days later. I would kind of compare this to actually when you're studying. You get an assignment, you work on it for a few days, and then you submit the assignment for grading. And you sometimes get some feedback, and sometimes you don't get any feedback, you just get a grade. So in the real world, when you submit your assignment, you're going to get real-time feedback or feedback that's maybe delayed by a few hours or the next day from that senior manager to work out, do I need to make any changes? Are you happy with it? Is it finalized? And I can move on to the next project. So this can be all kinds of things from copywriting and writing for articles. It can be content creation in terms of design and animation. It can be photography. There's all kinds of different creative stuff that you can do. Now, at the moment, a lot of that stuff is starting to be produced by AI, but it's not very good quality. You still need someone to kind of edit and select the good stuff from that process. And we've all read an article where it just sounds like it's written by a robot. You need that human element to it to make it really warm and interesting to read. And so copywriting is still a really important skill that you can do. Now, there's lots of other people that will basically make videos online that tell you all the different categories of work that you could do to work remotely. But my biggest point is this: it's a lot like when you study and you get an assignment and then you do the work and then you submit it a few days later. So that's the kind of tasks that you want to be focusing on, something that is not really, really high touch. Because this is the point. If you're in an office and you're working with people all day long and you're in a team and there's a lot of back and forth and you have meetings, you have discussions, and you sort of exchange all the different components of that piece of work during the day, it's a very difficult thing to do remotely because you can't have all of those team members working from home and actually keep things really efficient. There are some kinds of work where you have like a Slack channel and everyone's discussing and putting files in there and you've got the Teams meetings and you can do all this work remotely. But there are some industries where you just want to have everyone there in the same place so you can get the work done faster and you get feedback faster and everyone kind of completes the work together. You want to be focusing on work that you can do where there's less of that live teamwork stuff happening. You can have administration work or project work that you can get assigned and you can give it back a few days later. There isn't this really high demand to get the work done immediately. As long as it's done well, it can be submitted the next day or a few days later. If that's the kind of work that you can work on, then you can sort of set your own schedule. You can travel and you can be more flexible with your time because you're not having to submit it like immediately, where you have a boss that comes over, taps you on the shoulder and says, "Can you do this for me right now?" That's the sort of work that you can't do remotely because your boss is very used to having you there for immediate feedback and immediate kind of tasks to do. You need to be working on projects where your boss isn't as needy and the feedback isn't instant and you can submit the work a couple of days later or a few hours later. So it gives you enough lead time where you didn't have to be working face to face. So that's the biggest point, is if you want to do work remotely, you have to do work that is a little bit of a slower paced. It is not as urgent. It is project work that can be quite complicated. You can go away and do it, and a couple of days later, you give it back and it's done. And you might get some feedback for it. You make some adjustments and then you work on the next piece of work. If you can focus on work like that, you'll get this really nice conveyor belt of work that comes to you. You complete the work and you submit it, and you don't have to be physically in an office to do that. There's lots of different categories of work you can do that. And actually, if you look at websites like Fiverr and freelancer.com, you'll see all the most popular gigs and the gig work that people are doing. Those are some of the key categories that people are doing remotely because, of course, all of that work is done remotely. It can be things like design. It can be things like doing programming and doing coding. All these skills that you can learn and do remotely, but it comes down to that really simple principle. Are you working with a boss that needs you to be there immediately so they can tell you what to do and make lots of changes in real time? Or is the kind of thing you're working on a little bit less demanding and that work can be submitted 2 or 3 days later? If that's the case, that's the key stuff to focus on because it's less demanding and you don't have to be there in person to do it. People can trust you to get it done when they can't see you. But that's the other flip side of this coin, is if people can't see you, they can't really engage with you on a regular basis. Your managers won't develop a really close relationship with you. You won't be able to see what your peers are doing. You don't get this sort of vertical ability to go up through the career ladder that you have when you're working inside a company, inside an office, and other people can see and notice your performance and your responsiveness and how engaging you are. If you want to have a little bit more of a laid back approach and you don't want to climb a corporate ladder, you can absolutely do remote work. But once you do it for a couple of years, you might notice yourself getting left behind a little bit compared to your peers because the other people that you know in the industry are able to get more notoriety and more awareness of the good work that they do because they're physically there in person and they can be more engaging and they can say all the right things and go to the right meetings and go to the right conferences and do all those things that you need to do to hustle your way up the career ladder. If you don't want to do that and you simply want to do the tasks and the projects, that's great. You can do that stuff remotely, but eventually you will potentially get replaced by either an AI system that does that work or a person that simply does that work more efficiently than you can. So you have to keep this balance between having a period where you can do some remote work, but also looking at ways to engage more with that company. Go back into the office, go see the people, engage with them at different times during the year to make sure that they know who you are. They notice what you're doing. They notice the contribution that you're making beyond just the tasks you're completing and giving to a manager. Actually know who you are and they value who you are as a person. That way you have a deeper relationship with a company and you can leverage that over time to get what you want, which is a promotion or more salary or more flexibility. But you can't do that if you're completely invisible. So even if you work remotely, make sure people know what you're working on, share it and be visible. And that's actually what I use LinkedIn for, and all the social media content that I'm making is, as a content creator, I want to let people know what I'm doing. And the people who work with me are really aware of what I'm doing in my spare time, as well as the project work I do, because I'm sharing more of that journey and they can see it. So as long as you're visible, you're engaged and people know who you are. If you're invisible and they just see the projects you're working on, but they don't see you, it's harder to actually get ahead in your career. So just keep that in mind if you want to work remotely. There are consequences for working remotely because you won't be as engaged with the companies and brands that you work with because you're not physically there in person. So tread carefully.